I 30F met my husband Ryan 33 and when I was 27. At the time, his daughter Amy was 12. Her biological mom had been out of the picture for years. She left when Amy was 6 due to serious struggles with addiction and mental health. Ryan had full custody, and Amy only saw her mom maybe once or twice a year, usually supervised visits that often ended in disappointment when her mom didn't show. When Ryan and I started dating, I was really cautious about getting too involved too fast. I knew it could be hard for kids to accept someone new, especially given everything Amy had already been through. I'd never been married or had kids, but I always wanted to be a mom, and I felt this instant connection with both Ryan and Amy. Amy was super shy and quiet at first, but I could tell she was craving some kind of stability and love. She was so smart and curious, it just felt natural to want to be there for her. After about 6 months of dating, I started spending more time at their house. I'd help with homework, pack her lunches, drive her to soccer practice, just try to be present in her everyday life. Over time, she slowly started to open up to me. Then, one day, completely unprompted, she started calling me mom. I never asked her to. It just happened. I can't even explain how much that meant to me. By the time Ryan and I got married, Amy was 15. She already felt like my daughter in every way. I love her like she's my own, and honestly, being her mom has been the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. I just wanted to give her all the love and stability she didn't get early on. I attended every school event and parent-teacher conference, helped with science fair projects and book reports, taught her how to cook and do laundry and manage money, and was there for every scraped knee and broken heart and teenage drama that came up over the years. Ryan worked long hours as an engineer and traveled frequently for work, so I was often the one handling the day-to-day parenting responsibilities, and I loved every minute of it, even when it was exhausting and challenging. Amy and I developed a close relationship over the years, and she confided in me about everything from friend drama to boy troubles to her fears about the future. I helped her through her first heartbreak when she was 15, supported her when she wanted to quit piano to focus on soccer, and spent countless hours helping her with college applications and scholarship essays during her senior year of high school. When she got accepted to the state university with a partial academic scholarship, I was so proud I cried, and I felt like all the hard work and love I had invested in her over the years had been worth it. Amy studied business in college and did well academically, though she struggled sometimes with anxiety and self-doubt that I think stemmed from her early childhood experiences with her biological mother. I made sure she had access to counseling services at school and checked in with her regularly to make sure she was taking care of herself and not getting overwhelmed with coursework and social pressures. Ryan and I visited her at school several times each semester, and she came home for holidays and summer breaks, and our relationship remained strong and close throughout her college years. After Amy graduated, she moved back home for a few months while she looked for a job, and during that time she met Sean at a friend's party. Sean was a few years older than Amy and worked at a company, and he seemed like a nice enough young man, though I sometimes felt like he was a bit immature and not quite ready for a serious relationship. But Amy fell hard for him right away, and within 6 months they were talking about moving in together and getting engaged, which made me nervous because I thought they were rushing things and didn't really know each other well enough yet. Amy found a job at a financial planning firm and moved in with Sean after about 8 months of dating, and I tried to be supportive even though I had some concerns about their relationship dynamic. Sean seemed to have a lot of influence over Amy's decisions and opinions, and I noticed she started changing some of her values and priorities to align with his, which worried me because she had always been such an independent and strong-willed person. Ryan and I invited them for dinner regularly and tried to maintain a good relationship with both of them, but I could tell Amy was pulling away from us somewhat as she became more serious with Sean. When Amy was 24, she called me one evening to tell me she was pregnant, and while I was surprised because I knew they weren't married yet and hadn't been planning to start a family so soon, I was also excited about becoming a grandmother and told her how happy I was for them. Amy seemed nervous and uncertain about the pregnancy at first, but she said Sean was thrilled and they were planning to get married before the baby was born, which seemed like the right thing to do even if the timing wasn't ideal. I immediately started thinking about all the ways I could help Amy prepare for motherhood and support her through her pregnancy and the early months with the baby. I had saved money over the years specifically for occasions like this, and I was planning to help them with nursery furniture and baby clothes and whatever else they needed to get ready for their first child. I started researching cribs and car seats and strollers, and I was looking forward to going shopping with Amy and helping her register for baby gifts and planning a baby shower. About 2 weeks after Amy told me about the pregnancy, she and Sean came over for Sunday dinner, which had been a tradition in our family for years. Amy seemed different that day, more distant and formal than usual, and I could tell something was bothering her, but I didn't want to push her to talk about it if she wasn't ready. After dinner, while Ryan and Sean were watching football in the living room, Amy asked if she could talk to me privately in the kitchen, and I thought she might want to discuss some concerns about the pregnancy or ask for advice about something. Amy sat down at the kitchen table and looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. She told me that she and Sean had been talking about the baby and their future together, and they had decided they wanted to make sure their child grew up knowing the truth about their family relationships and not being confused about who their real relatives were. I didn't understand what she meant at first, so I asked her to explain what she was talking about. Amy took a deep breath and told me that she appreciated everything I had done for her over the years, but she wanted me to understand that I wasn't her real mother and never had been, and now that she was going to be a mother herself, she wanted to make sure her child understood that difference between biological family and chosen family. She said her baby would have a real mother unlike her, and she didn't want there to be any confusion about my role in their lives going forward. I couldn't breathe for a moment, and I asked Amy what she meant by saying her baby would have a real mother unlike her. Amy explained that she had been thinking a lot about her own childhood and how confusing it had been to have me acting like her mother when I wasn't really her mother, and she had decided that she didn't want to put her own child through that same experience. She said she and Sean wanted to be very clear about family boundaries and make sure their child knew exactly who their biological parents were and who was just a step relative. I tried to stay calm and asked Amy if she was saying that all the years I had spent raising her and caring for her and being there for her didn't matter because I wasn't her biological mother. Amy said that of course it mattered, and she was grateful for everything I had done, but that didn't change the fact that I wasn't her real mother, and she didn't want her child to be confused about that distinction. She said she had talked to Sean about it extensively, and they both agreed that it was important to be honest about family relationships from the beginning. I felt tears starting to form in my eyes, and I asked Amy if this meant she didn't consider me her mother anymore, and she said that I had been like a mother to her, but I wasn't actually her mother, and now that she was going to be a real mother herself, she understood the difference. She said she hoped I would still want to be involved in her child's life as Ryan's wife and Amy's stepmother, but she wanted to make sure everyone understood their proper roles and relationships. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes or so, with Amy explaining her position and me trying to understand how the daughter I had raised and loved for 15 years could suddenly decide that our relationship didn't count as real because we weren't biologically related. Amy kept emphasizing that she wasn't trying to hurt me and that she appreciated everything I had done, but she also kept repeating that I wasn't her real mother and her child would be lucky to have a real mother from the beginning. Unlike her, when we rejoined Ryan and Sean in the living room, I could barely hold myself together, and Ryan could tell something was wrong, but I didn't want to cause a scene in front of Sean, so I waited until after they left to tell him what Amy had said. Ryan was shocked and angry and couldn't believe Amy would say such hurtful things to me after everything I had done for her over the years. That night I couldn't sleep and kept replaying the conversation with Amy over and over in my mind. I thought about all the times Amy had called me mom and told me she loved me and came to me for comfort and advice, and I couldn't reconcile those memories with the cold, dismissive way she had spoken to me. That evening I wondered if Sean had influenced her thinking about this, or if she had always felt this way and just hidden it from me. Over the next few days I kept waiting for Amy to call and apologize or explain that she had been having a bad day and didn't mean what she said, but no call came. Ryan tried to talk to her, but she stood by everything she had said and insisted that she was just being honest about family relationships and didn't understand why we were making such a big deal out of it. She said she still loved me and wanted me to be part of her life, but she wanted to be clear about boundaries and roles, especially now that she was going to be a mother. I realized that Amy's attitude toward me had fundamentally changed and wasn't going to change back, and I had to decide how to respond to this new reality. I had always been the one who handled most of the financial support for Amy's needs and wants, from school supplies and clothes when she was younger to helping with college expenses and giving her money for emergencies or special occasions. Ryan contributed too, but I had been the one managing most of the day-to-day financial decisions regarding Amy, and I had saved significant amount of money over the years specifically to help her with major life events like getting married and having children. I had already started making plans to help Amy and Sean financially with baby-related expenses, and I had been looking forward to being the kind of grandmother who could spoil her grandchild and help make their lives easier in whatever ways I could. I had imagined taking Amy shopping for maternity clothes and baby furniture, hosting a baby shower, setting up a college fund for the baby, and being actively involved in providing financial support throughout the child's life. But after Amy's declaration that I wasn't her real mother and her baby would have a real mother unlike her, I started to question whether I should continue providing financial support for someone who had made it clear that she didn't consider our relationship to be real or meaningful. Beyond the legal step relationship, I thought about all the money I had spent on Amy over the years, from everyday expenses to major purchases, and how I had always been happy to do it because I considered her my daughter and wanted to give her everything I could. I decided that if Amy wanted to draw clear boundaries between biological family and chosen family, and she should be prepared to live with the consequences of those boundaries. If I wasn't her real mother, then I shouldn't be expected to provide the kind of financial support that real mothers typically provide to their children. If she wanted to make it clear that I was just Ryan's wife and her stepmother, then perhaps I should limit my involvement to whatever level she thought was appropriate for someone in that role. I talked to Ryan about my decision, and he initially tried to convince me to reconsider because he thought I was acting out of hurt feelings and might regret cutting off financial support later. He pointed out that Amy was young and might not fully understand the implications of what she was saying, and that she might come to her senses after the baby was born and she realized how much she needed our support. But I explained to Ryan that this wasn't about revenge or punishment, it was about respecting the boundaries that Amy had established and responding appropriately to her redefinition of our relationship. I told Ryan that I had spent 15 years pouring my love and resources into Amy because I considered her my daughter, but if she didn't see our relationship that way, then I needed to adjust my expectations and behavior accordingly. I said that I would still be polite and cordial to Amy and would treat her the way I would treat any other young woman who was married to someone in my extended family, but I wasn't going to continue acting like her mother if she didn't want me to be her mother. Ryan eventually understood my perspective, though he was still hoping that Amy would realize her mistake and apologize, which would allow us to return to our previous family dynamic. I told him that I hoped that would happen too, but I couldn't continue to invest emotionally and financially in someone who had explicitly rejected the relationship I thought we had. I said that if Amy wanted to rebuild our relationship on different terms in the future, I would be open to that conversation, but for now I needed to protect myself from further hurt and disappointment. I called my bank and canceled the automatic transfers I had been making to a savings account earmarked for Amy's future needs, and I also canceled plans to purchase baby furniture and other items I had been planning to buy for the nursery. Didn't announce these changes to Amy or make a big production out of it. I simply stopped doing the things I had been doing to provide financial support and assistance with various expenses and purchases. The first time Amy noticed the change was about 2 weeks later, when she called to ask if I could help her and Sean with the deposit for a larger apartment they wanted to rent before the baby was born. I told her that I wouldn't be able to help with that expense, and when she asked why, I explained that since she had made it clear that I wasn't her real mother, I had decided to limit my financial involvement to whatever level was appropriate for someone in my actual role as her stepmother. Amy seemed surprised and upset, and said she hadn't expected me to react this way to their conversation about family boundaries. She said she thought I would understand that drawing clear distinctions between biological and step relationships didn't mean she loved me less or wanted me to be less involved in her life. I told Amy that I did understand her position, and I was simply responding to it in a logical way, because if I wasn't her real mother, then I shouldn't be expected to provide the kind of financial support that real mothers typically provide. Amy asked if I was punishing her for being honest about our relationship, and I explained that I wasn't punishing anyone. I was just adjusting my behavior to match the boundaries she had established. I said that if she wanted me to be involved in her life as a stepmother, then I would be involved at whatever level seemed appropriate for that relationship, but I wasn't going to continue acting like her mother if she didn't want me to fill that role. The conversation became tense, and Amy accused me of being petty and vindictive, which hurt because I had tried to explain that my decision was based on logic rather than emotion. I told Amy that I wasn't trying to hurt her, and I hoped she would be happy and successful in her life, but I also needed to protect myself from the confusion and pain that came from continuing to act like her mother when she had explicitly told me I wasn't her real mother. Amy hung up the phone without resolving anything, and over the next few weeks she tried several times to get Ryan to convince me to change my mind about providing financial support. Ryan explained my reasoning to her, but also encouraged her to apologize and try to repair a relationship, which Amy refused to do because she said she hadn't done anything wrong by being honest about family relationships. As Amy's pregnancy progressed, there were several other occasions when she reached out for financial help with various expenses related to preparing for the baby, and each time I politely declined and reminded her that I was limiting my involvement to whatever seemed appropriate for a stepmother rather than a mother. Amy became increasingly frustrated with this response and started complaining to Ryan that I was being unreasonable and cruel by withdrawing support when she needed it most. Ryan found himself caught in the middle of our conflict and tried to mediate by suggesting compromises that might satisfy both of us, but Amy refused to acknowledge that her comments about real mothers had been hurtful or inappropriate, and I refused to continue providing financial support for someone who had explicitly rejected our parent-child relationship. Ryan eventually stopped trying to mediate and told Amy that she needed to work things out with me directly if she wanted to change the situation. Amy's biological mother had been absent from her life for most of the pregnancy, which was typical of their relationship pattern. Over the years, Amy had tried to reconnect with her biological mother a few times during her teens and early 20s, but these attempts usually ended in disappointment when her mother failed to follow through on promises or showed up intoxicated to plan meetings. I had always been supportive of Amy's desire to have a relationship with her biological mother, even though it sometimes meant dealing with the emotional aftermath. When those attempts failed about 2 months before Amy's due date, her biological Mother contacted her and expressed interest in being involved with the baby, which seemed to reinforce Amy's belief that biological relationships were more important and meaningful than chosen relationships. Amy started talking about how excited she was that her child would have a real grandmother through her biological mother, and she seemed to think this validated her decision to draw clear boundaries between biological and step family members. But I knew from years of experience that Amy's biological mother was unreliable and would likely disappoint Amy and potentially harm the baby if she was given access to them. But since I was no longer in the role of mother or advisor, I didn't feel it was my place to warn Amy about the potential problems with relying on her biological mother for support and guidance. Amy gave birth to a healthy baby boy in early spring, and Ryan and I visited the hospital to meet our new grandchild. Amy seemed happy to see us and was proud to show off the baby, but there was still tension in our relationship, and she made several comments about how wonderful it was that her son would have a real grandmother through her biological mother. I held the baby and congratulated Amy and Sean, but I kept my visit brief because I could feel the emotional strain of the situation over the next few months. Amy's biological mother did become more involved in her life and with the baby, but as I had expected, this involvement was inconsistent and sometimes problematic. Amy's mother would promise to babysit and then cancel at the last minute, or she would show up to visit when she had been drinking, or she would give parenting advice that was outdated or potentially harmful. Amy started to become frustrated with her biological mother's unreliability, but she was reluctant to admit that the relationship wasn't working out the way she had hoped. Meanwhile, Amy continued to struggle financially with the expenses of new parenthood, and she made several more attempts to ask me for help with various baby-related costs. Ryan was also struggling with the situation because he wanted to be a supportive grandfather but felt caught between his loyalty to me and his desire to help Amy. He started providing some financial assistance to Amy on his own, but he couldn't make up for all the support I had previously provided. Amy began to realize that she had been taking my financial contributions for granted and hadn't fully understood how much I had been helping her over the years. The situation came to a head when Amy's biological mother showed up to babysit one evening while Amy and Sean went out for dinner, and she left the baby alone in the apartment while she went to buy cigarettes. A neighbor heard the baby crying and called the police, who found the infant unattended and contacted Amy and Sean. Amy was horrified and realized that her biological mother couldn't be trusted with her child's safety, but she was also embarrassed about the incident and worried it might affect her custody of the baby. Amy called me the next day crying and upset and asked if I would consider helping her find reliable childcare so she could return to work without worrying about her baby's safety. She admitted that her biological mother had turned out to be as unreliable as she had always been, and she said she was starting to understand why I had been such an important part of her life for so many years. I listened to her concerns and sympathized with her situation, but I also reminded her that she had established boundaries about our relationship, and I was trying to respect those boundaries. Amy asked if we could talk about rebuilding our relationship and finding a way to move forward that would work for both of us. I told her that I would be willing to have that conversation, but it would need to include an acknowledgement that her comments about real mothers had been hurtful and unfair, and a genuine apology for dismissing the 15 years I had spent raising and supporting her. Amy was quiet for a long time, and then said she needed to think about what I had said. Several weeks passed without any further communication from Amy, and I assumed she had decided not to pursue reconciliation because she wasn't willing to apologize or acknowledge that she had been wrong. Ryan continued to visit Amy and the baby regularly and kept me updated on their well-being, but he respected my decision not to resume financial support or active involvement until Amy was ready to address the issues between us. Then one evening, Amy showed up at our house unannounced, carrying her baby and looking exhausted and overwhelmed. She asked if she could talk to me privately, and we sat in the living room while Ryan went to the kitchen to give us space. Amy told me that she had been thinking about our conversation and about everything that had happened since she announced her pregnancy, and she realized that she had been wrong to dismiss our relationship and the role I had played in her life. Amy said that becoming a mother herself had helped her understand how much love and sacrifice was involved in raising a child, and she had come to appreciate that biology wasn't the only thing that made someone a real parent. She said that her biological mother had given birth to her, but I was the one who had actually raised her and been there for her through all the important moments of her life. She apologized for hurting me and said she hoped I would consider resuming our relationship as mother and daughter. I told Amy that I appreciated her apology and her willingness to acknowledge that she had been wrong, but I also explained that rebuilding trust would take time and couldn't happen overnight. I said that I had been deeply hurt by her rejection of our relationship and her dismissive comments about real mothers, and while I was glad she had come to understand the value of what we had shared, I needed to see consistent evidence that she truly valued our relationship before I could fully invest in it again. Amy asked what she could do to prove that she had changed her perspective and really wanted to rebuild our relationship. I told her that actions would be more important than words and that I would need to see her treating me with the respect and consideration that she would show to someone she truly considered to be her mother. Over the following months, Amy made consistent efforts to include me in her life and her baby's life, asking for my advice on parenting decisions and inviting me to spend time with him regularly. She stopped making comments about biological versus step relationships and started referring to me as her son's grandmother without any qualifiers. I gradually began to provide limited financial assistance again, starting with small contributions to help with baby supplies, and gradually increasing my involvement as Amy demonstrated that she truly valued our relationship. I was careful not to resume the same level of financial support immediately because I wanted to make sure that Amy's change of heart was genuine and lasting rather than just a response to her immediate financial needs. The process of rebuilding our relationship took almost a year, but eventually we were able to establish a new dynamic that felt healthy and sustainable for both of us. Amy never again made comments about real versus fake family relationships, and she consistently treated me with the love and respect I had always hoped for from a daughter. Resumed providing financial support at levels that felt appropriate and comfortable, and I became actively involved in my grandson's life as his grandmother.